Chapter 6, Tails, You Win. This chapter opens with a powerful idea. In investing, business, and life, it's often the rare extreme events, the tails, that explain most of the results. A small number of big wins can outweigh a large number of failures, and that's a truth we tend to overlook. Housel begins with the story of Heinz Berggruen, a legendary art collector who built a massive fortune. Interestingly, 99% of the art he collected wasn't particularly valuable, but the 1% that included masterpieces by Picasso made his collection worth billions. The point? You can be wrong most of the time, and as long as your few wins are big enough, you still come out ahead. We see the same in business. Disney's early films left the company deep in debt, but Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs exploded in success, earning $8 million in just 6 months, a game changer that paid off debts and transformed the company. In investing, tails show up in surprising ways. Housel explains that a J.P. Morgan study of the Russell 3000 index found that 40% of the companies in the index lost 70% of their value and never recovered. Yet the overall index performed strongly because 7% of companies delivered massive returns. Companies like Amazon, Microsoft, or Walmart. Essentially, a small handful of companies drive most of the market's long-term success. He also highlights the tech world. Amazon's growth is largely due to Prime and AWS. Apple's surge comes mainly from the iPhone. Google, Facebook, and Apple hire people into roles where only 1 or 2 projects may define the outcome. They're building tail careers. But the lesson isn't just about companies, it's also about investors' behavior. Housel introduces 3 imaginary investors. Sue, who invests $1 every month no matter what. Jim, who invests only when there's no recession. Tom, who waits to invest until 6 months after a recession ends. The results are striking. Sue ends up with $435,551, Jim with $257,386, and Tom with $234,476. The takeaway? Consistency beats trying to time the market. Over 1,428 months from 1900 to 2019, just over 300 months were recessions, meaning Sue stayed invested and won by a wide margin. Housel then connects this idea to mindset. Tails drive everything in investing, but people often fail to accept that failures, flops, and false starts are normal. Venture capitalists, for example, know that most of their investments will fail, but just 1 or 2 wins can return 50x or more, making up for all the losses. He uses colourful examples. Chris Rock tests his jokes in small clubs before big specials, knowing most will flop. Jeff Bezos reminded Amazon's team that some failures would be so big they'd make the Fire Phone look like a tiny little blip. Netflix's Reed Hastings once said their hit ratio is too high, pushing the team to take more risks and embrace failure. Housel drives home the point with Warren Buffett. People admire Buffett's top investments, but he's owned 400 to 500 stocks over his life, making most of his money on just 10 of them. Charlie Munger summed it up. If you remove Berkshire Hathaway's few top investments, their track record is average. The key message here is summed up beautifully by George Soros. It's not whether you're right or wrong that's important, but how much money you make when you're right and how much you lose when you're wrong. You can be wrong half the time and still become incredibly successful. Finally, Housel zooms out to remind us, in a galaxy of 100 billion planets, Earth has intelligent life. The fact that you're even reading this book is the product of the longest tail event imaginable, and that's something to celebrate. This summary was powered and narrated by Ch.6,